Hi, friends. Good morning from over here, at least this morning. Um, I just my name is Hannah, and this is my podcast where I'm just talking about everything I'm learning and thinking about while I'm on this continued journey of figuring out as a disabled person, or differently abled, neurodiverse, how do I enjoy life more in a way that is, fits me personally as an individual. How do I live life more on my terms, figure out what my terms are, what my needs are, what my desires are, and then live according to that so that life can be more enjoyable. And so that I can feel that sense of like it's meaningful, like everything I've been through, it means something, and helping people and having more bonds with people who have been through similar things, and earning money because money is essential to protect everything dear to us in this world. Unfortunately, money lets us care for our loved ones. Money lets us care for it lets us have power and control in a positive way. It lets us have decision making power, options, resources, healthcare, um, fun experiences, like I don't know, like travel or doing things together, um, and owning land to protect land and being able to, have fun. Like I don't know, I'm thinking of my own thing. I really want to co-own land one day that I can have be able to have my beautiful garden and shared gardens with other people and have it be like a really big social kind of activity. And that could very well be far off. Maybe I'll find a version of that, but it won't be exactly what I think about, where I don't quite have the keys, but I am still like I'm still like in the van or whatever. Like, um, but anyway, um, yeah, just something that I wanted to talk about today that's on my mind is this idea of hope, because lately I've been wondering, like, it's so hard for me to know who I am, how to express myself, like who am I after these 33 years? Like what is actually real to me, what has the collective experiences now shaped me into, like who am I changing, morphing into now, that's different from the past. And it I feel it can be really distracting, all these different narratives that we are given. We hear from other people ways to interpret our emotions, our thoughts, and it can really get in our own head, especially like I've known in the past that of course, it's not good for me to be harmful and punishing and hating to myself, but I lacked other resources and support in order to use anything else, have anything else be emotionally accessible to me in order to survive and, force myself to be in situations that were horrific, but it ultimately gave me more of the type of freedom and power that I needed. I'm thinking about when I delivered Amazon packages for 2 years and that whole thing, forcing myself to stay there. And that was over 2 years ago since I left there now. But anyway, in general, I'm just thinking of hope. Yeah, we can get really weighed down. I get really weighed down. So many of us get weighed down. Just like, what was all of that from the past? How do I have power, control, safety now? not in a way that demeans other people, but in a way that it like makes up for all the times that we betrayed ourselves in the past, that we've harmed ourselves, that we have, you know, gone against ourselves, because that is the only way we were taught how to handle problems, you know? We were taught we take responsibility, we take personal responsibility for it. We were taught um, that's the only mature thing to do. That's the only way to have any hope of changing the situation. And we take responsibility that isn't even ours to take, not from like an ethical standpoint, but from like a realistic standpoint, you know. Um, and then we punish, shame, harm, physically or emotionally, um, ourselves, um, and also sometimes in in that, there's also that perspective of like making sacrifices. That's the other side of the coin with that, is that part of us that doing all that harm is kind of like, you know, that kind of tragic figure that is like, I made all these sacrifices in order to keep you alive because I don't have the support that I need. Because I've been forgotten by the outside world. I have never had access to the resources I need from the very beginning. As a kid growing up, being raised, the types of experiences we have, the types of resources we have. So it just leaves us like innately unaware of how to support our own selves, how to make decisions based not on external fears, but based on, you know, how do I not just survive within the already created system, but how do I feel into like what are my unique strengths and needs that I need to be fulfilled? It's like my mission to my own self to fulfill. Like most of us probably are, we don't have that opportunity, maybe not ever in our lives, or maybe it just comes at a different point in our life, and along the whole way, while we're disconnected from ourselves for our whole lives, since we're a child onwards, we're taught to hate and shame and punish ourselves and take responsibility to try to change things to feel better. Along that whole path, well, I forgot what I was gonna say. I need to have it written down so I can like look above and see like what in the world am I even talking about. But basically, hope to me is something that it's not something that I am doing, having hope that maybe having hope that things will work out in ways that I don't understand, that I currently can't see, and I'll only understand in retrospect in the future, or be like, oh, that was the missing ingredient, or that was the event that needed to happen. There's just so much I don't know, like how, like what to even look for, and so many ways that I am hampered, so many ways that I'm disabled that make the typical practical options like not accessible to me, because the avenues we take, it has to be like emotionally and physically accessible to the individual. And because of my experiences and just how I've been shaped, the narratives that I've learned, the cause and effects that I've learned through experience in my life, I'm very like unsteady. I can't take on everything as my own. I can't take on everything as my own to try to have the perfect mindset, I can do that for short periods of time, but it's so exhausting, and it's like some of it is just luck, like in whatever ways possible. We just take tiny little opportunities, to tiny little steps that feel comfortable with where we are now in the present, to open up for more opportunities to come in that can meet us where we are, because I know a lot of it has to do with luck and just patience. And that's why, in part, so many people never make it out in the first place, because there aren't. Oh, that's my laundry, the alarm for my laundry. um, but, well, I guess I need to go get this laundry. Hello, okay. I did my laundry and I don't remember exactly what I was talking about, but maybe that's for the best so I can sum up what I was trying to say. Um, Basically, I think that hope, um, I've just been thinking lately that hope is necessary. Like, hope isn't something that I'm going to give myself because I have the exact right circumstances, but hope is something I'm giving myself because I don't have the right circumstances, you know. Hope is all that I have. And I'm talking relatively, of course. I'm grateful for all the things that I do have on my side, all the resources, all the supports. But there's also a lot missing. A lot missing. That's a reality also. And hope is a part of that radical self-acceptance and radical compassion I give myself, so that I know that there is a solution to everything. There's a way to live and feel safe. There's a way for me to live and experience things that I didn't even know were missing. It's just a matter of patience. And this is something that helps me keep on going when I start to get really antsy and I start to get like, um, have a bit of frustration and think like maybe I just need to get with the program and try to be a normal person out there. I need to go down to the Safeway and try to force myself to stay in that job in order to get money. And then, I know for me that that wouldn't last long, and it doesn't need to last long. Um, that is not where my set of skills can be utilized by the world. I think that's something important that people who struggle with, I don't even know what words to put it in, who struggle with being disabled, being, like down on ourselves for a long time, being disempowered for a long time. It's really important that we can recognize like we do have real strengths that the world needs, and to believe that the world needs it. Um, Not every circumstance needs it, not every person needs it, but there are circumstances in which somebody is praying for someone like us. Um, or, you know, it doesn't have to be a somebody, it could be a something like a tree, something that affects people indirectly. Um, yeah, it's necessary. A part of hope is to be like, we may not know what our strengths are, but we know that we have them, and it's worth us following. I'm telling this to myself, it's worth me following my emotions, making choices based on my emotional feedback so that I can get closer to learning who I actually am, and, you know, what I can actually offer people. And I have ideas sometimes of what that kind of might be, but I think a lot of it has to do with luck. Like the path we end up going on, or the self-discovery, is based on luck, just putting ourselves in situations that are slightly more likely to find circumstances in which we can experience how we are needed, how we can be acting in a way that is, kind of natural, just comes natural and easy to us. But other people actually get benefits from it in a way that, and it has to be people who are able to reward us in a way that is meaningful to us, you know. That might be money, or it might be, you know, some situation where the emotional support feels really powerful, but it has to be emotionally based. It's a whole new thing to learn after you've been going by just forcing yourself to perform out of, you know, preconceived ideas of what is logical, what is expected, what will prevent you from being harmed by people. Yeah, so, yeah, there's something sometimes I'm remembering is to hope out of spite, you know, a little bit, to just hope out of spite, um, for all of the oppressive forces that have acted through people, that have acted through systems and organizations. And knowing that that is, you know, sometimes a form of revenge we can get, like, you know, safe, non-violent, non-destructive revenge is knowing that, as long as we keep on hoping and we keep on continuing to be more self-loving to ourselves and not betray ourselves anymore, that is a great way to get revenge, to make all those people and circumstances of the past irrelevant, just like dust in the wind. Like, that was a tragedy that happened because of the lack of resources we had. And resources, I say that really broadly, you know. Resources can be information, experiences, community support, physical resources, you know, like opportunities in which to try to connect our capacities to an avenue in which we can be compensated and rewarded for our capacities. And it's a real thing that if you have used your capacities for years and it just gets you punishment and harm from other people, you will start to doubt if you even have capacities and natural strengths and capabilities. Or you might assume that your best qualities are your worst qualities, and that you need to consider something else you don't really care about, your strength zone, just because it's safe, and maybe for the time being that fits. But as time goes on, like, I'm really interested in recovering in myself. Like, what are these parts of me that were demonized? I became disconnected to in my own self, that I started to demonize, that other people punished me for. But they're actually my strengths that are like a big innate part, and it comes naturally to me. So it, you know, I think that's ideal for everybody, to the things that come naturally to us, that don't take so much finagling and energy and being drained, that those are the things that we should try to focus on to base our decision making and life path around, you know. And it's sometimes, I'm also thinking that sometimes when people or circumstances, it we feel, we start to demonize strengths in ourselves. Sometimes it's not necessarily demonizing. It can also just be not seeing it, not recognizing it because it is neglected. Like we are in circumstances where it ever has the opportunity to even come out, or other people just don't say anything, not thanking people, um, not acknowledging and appreciating people. And it sucks because in this world, it can do so much damage to not appreciate and thank people and tell people like you admire things in them, but at the same time, we can feel pressured to not communicate these kind things to people because we're afraid if we let boundaries down in that way to communicate like like I admire you to somebody, to communicate like, oh, you're good at that, that's really strong. Like we can be taught that there are negative things that necessarily have to come from it, like obligations. Like I think that's a lot of the times one of the reasons why we don't realize our strengths and our capabilities, because other people might see it in us, but they feel afraid, like if they point something out, that they might feel like obligated or pressured into doing things that are against them, you know? So sometimes we don't notice the good things about ourselves, not out of maliciousness, but out of fear from other people. And I guess, you know, it's really messy and I don't have the answers right now, but I think that at least understanding that there are a lot of possible interpretations that helps me at least feel like in situations where people are potentially safe, I don't always have to interpret them as oppressive or like a demon working through them, because yeah, that is something that I think it's important to recognize, that sometimes people just, it feels like a demonic force. I mean, metaphorically, I don't believe in supernatural things, but it feels like just so oppressive, the ways in which somebody acts. And sometimes, it's a waste of energy to have empathy or compassion for them or to get entangled in that. And other times, it's the only way to keep hope for a relationship to develop, to continue, to be, have mutual support where we, especially with close loved ones, where we don't paint them as demons when we are hurt. And how much do you want to invest your energy in someone? We all have limited energy. You don't have to tell someone you see them as a demon, but I think it's okay to see people as demons and just to keep a distance. Some people are demons to us. And especially if you are differently abled, if you're really sensitive, I think there needs to be not this like shaming in the sense that we're supposed to see everybody as like perfect angels or be so loving to all kinds of strangers. Like, yes, be kind to people, but being kind doesn't mean that we go against ourselves, It doesn't mean that we betray ourselves in our efforts to prove to ourselves or to other people that we are good because we are kind, because we are so understanding and compassionate. And yeah, so it's like it's good qualities to see people compassionately, but we need to use it in a really structured framework so that this ability can not harm us in our attempts to help other people, and so that we can actually benefit. That's something I've been thinking about also lately. Like we all deserve to benefit from our strengths, and I think somewhere along the way we can get I know I have. I've gotten tied up in this idea that um I'm not like, in order to be a good person. Sorry, I'm starting to get uh tired. My mind's kind of like, ooh, all over the place. Anyway, I don't remember what I was just talking about, but that's okay because I have other thoughts and emotions coming in, and I know it is kind of like it's funny and it kind of sucks to have the emotions come, but I think it's necessary to just feel them, let them go. It's exhausting for years trying to suppress emotions. And I think a lot of the reasons why people do use such shame and punishment and anger against ourselves and each other is because we're afraid of the possibility of showing grief and sadness, because it can be correlated to narratives where we feel obligated to, these like submissive kind of narratives where we feel like we're obligated to be whatever else somebody wants or thinks of us. Like, but showing emotion and experiencing grief and sadness, we don't have to approach our own selves with this mindset of like, this means I'm weak, this means I am giving in, this means I am giving authority to somebody else, this means I am. It's like, no, like a part of our own authority for ourselves, our own power, our own self trust, which allows us to be equipped to make strong decisions that are in tune with our actual needs and desires, and you know incorporating all of the emotional information that our body offers us. um a part of that is to feel these emotions and know that it actually makes us stronger. It makes us stronger. I think it's important that we tell ourselves that and remember that, because everything is ultimately based on the relationship we have with our own self and the way that we interpret what we are doing, and that affects how we interpret other people, based on how we're seeing our own selves. And I found for me, like, I have so much like shame and self punishment, hatred just ingrained in me that it's like feels like an oppressive virus. Like, how do you get rid of all of this? And I know, sorry, I know the answer is to have new experiences that kind of replace the sense of like those situations in the past which caused us to internalize blame. So, okay, right. Bad things happened to us in the past. Bad things that were the result, the failures of the systems of the world, lack of resources, lack of love, lack of all this, but we internalized self-hatred, self-punishment, responsibility for those things that happened. So now it's like, okay, the way to heal this, I really think, is to have new experiences that are like, oh, good things happening, beautiful things happening. And internalizing that um, that these things can happen, because of who we are. That wasn't quite the thought I had when I started thinking of this, but the actual thought I had left. So I said a version that was kind of on the same track, but not as nuanced as what I was thinking and feeling. Things go really quickly. This is a part of the reason why I prefer to write, because when I'm talking, there's such another level of activity in my mind, of kind of self-monitoring, of performing, in the sense of, my brain's going towards literally talking, and it prevents me from staying latched on to those ideas, because I just have more energy going other places instead of just like everything focused just like on my mind and like typing. You can't see my hands. My hands are down here typing. Okay, now you can see my hands. Why hasn't my computer been like this the whole time? Anyway, don't remember what I was talking about, but that was in that moment. I'm in a new moment now. And yeah, I have written on my notes here. It is hard not having easily marketable skills, you know? When you aren't rewarded for the things you do. You don't get money, you actually get like people. I kind of talked about that before, but when you're not rewarded, when there's, or when you aren't set up, when you don't set yourself up to be in positions where you can receive money. By setting yourself up, I mean saying, hey, I want money. Hey, I believe I have a worthy service that deserves money. You know? When you don't have the courage, the self-trust, that hope, that sense of like spite against all the horrific things that have happened, and that sense of hope, like I deserve to have a better future. I deserve to have more power, more opportunities, more self-trust, like a sense that I can turn things around, and like a sense that I do have strengths. And the things of the past, I always did have a strength. We always had strengths in the past that we could have used. Maybe we couldn't have unless that strength is, or unless, we have the ingredient of loving ourselves and not using violence against ourselves. But basically, it's definitely hard for me making these videos, but I think it is a necessary part of my own path to learn how to express myself as I actually am, and not, to know that I can have total self-trust and be on my own side no matter what I'm expressing, I'm not being afraid of expressing the truth, which looks messy, which looks, I can have a lot of associations with it to express in really vulnerable ways. And I want that strength in me to know, like, no matter who else is around, that I can always be acting true to myself, or like communicating truthfully to myself. And sometimes we have to communicate truthfully to ourselves in the presence of other people for other people to actually understand us, instead of like trying to communicate persuasion and forcing someone to, like, trying to convince someone that, like, we are logical, we are smart, we are intelligent, we have it all under control, and trying to get someone to see us through that lens. Just being able to express things really messy and know that the people are free to their own interpretations, you know? And we make our own decisions based on people's authentic reactions. I mean, that's what I'm doing, what I encourage and hope other people can do also. All this is so ungrounded, right? It's lots of thoughts and feelings without a structured narrative around it. But this is a part of the messiness of not knowing, not yet feeling sure of who you are, what your strengths are, what you're even trying to talk about and communicate.